Hello, everybody. I'm George from Ireland. Well, thank you for coming back to my channel. I'm talking about the fourth anniversary of the Russian Federation's recognition of the Lugansk People's Republic and the Donetsk People's Republic as sovereign states. So this is an act preparatory to Russia launching its full-scale war against Ukraine. Anyway, in 2014, Russia invaded Ukraine, a more limited war. Then they stole Crimea, which was Ukrainian sovereign soil, which even Putin himself had recognized as Ukrainian soil when he signed a treaty in 2003, ratified by the Russian parliament. Okay, so they launched that war, and they only managed to seize part of Donetsk and part of Lugansk oblasts in southeastern Ukraine. But these were places which were more ethnically Russian, more Russophone than the rest of Ukraine. There's no question it was legally and morally Ukrainian. And of course, people were allowed to speak Russian, practice Russian culture there. Zelensky himself is a native Russophone. He's from the center of Ukraine. And what else? So they invaded these. And they got mired in the conflict, which became a low-level conflict by about 2022. There was just some sniping and so on, and they proclaimed themselves. I mean, the Russian stooges, Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, and indeed Russians had actually crossed the border illegally and taken part in the administration. But really, it was just an illegal adjunct of Russia. They've tried the same game with Abkhazia, with South Ossetia, with Transnistria, and so forth. So it was a puppet state. And remember, these regions, they voted for Ukrainian independence. Every single region in Ukraine voted for independence in 1991, including Crimea. Now, Crimea was quite narrow, like 53% for independence. It was higher in Luhansk and Donetsk. Now, Putin will jealously guard Russian state sovereignty, and he wouldn't even allow a referendum in anywhere else. And Tatarstan even voted for independence, even proclaimed independence in the early 90s, but was intimidated into backing down by Boris Yeltsin, for whom Putin worked. But anyway, so Putin was determined to create casus belli, and that's why he recognized them. So he gave his announcement, and he signed decrees. This on the friendship, cooperation, mutual assistance with these two entities. Diplomatic recognition. They've also recognized South Ossetia and Abkhazia. I don't think they actually recognized Transnistria. Nobody else in the world has. And obviously, Russian troops were there. Fighting for 8 years beforehand, and obviously Moscow lied and lied and lied about that, as they lie about just about everything. You would have to be staggeringly stupid to trust a word that comes out of the Kremlin. Anyway, so then that's when Putin had clearly just announced to his henchmen that he was going to launch this full-scale war against Ukraine, and that's why someone was stunned, were ashen-faced, particularly Sergei Lavrov, the wily foreign minister, and Sergei Narishkin, who blundered, who couldn't get it right, and that's why Putin's saying, "Speak straight about this. Do you support or not?" And of course, everybody agrees with him because they realize the repercussions. So they're still assuming that they would defeat Ukraine quite quickly. I mean, everybody did. Western analysts did, but they realized there'd be serious diplomatic pushback. Hundreds of diplomats would be expelled. There will be tough sanctions and stuff like that. So to actually, for one sovereign state to attempt to erase another, that was unprecedented for the last century or so in Europe. Okay, so and remember where you heard it first. I said, well, obviously this is not really about independence for these countries. Putin doesn't want independence for anyone apart from Russia. This is step one. Step two was absorption into the Russian Federation. Then he began his war 3 days later, and that was a very strong signal what he's going to do. Remember, I mean, the warnings from MI6 and the CIA were flashing red, telling Zelensky what was going to happen. I remember on the 23rd of February, they went public. They said within 48 hours this war will begin. It began 24 hours later, so they were bang on. I mean, it is 48 hours within 48 hours, so that could be 47 hours later, 46 hours later, or anything less. And so they were correct. And Zelensky should have declared martial law. Okay, there might have been reason to be a little bit skeptical. He just didn't want to believe it before then. If he did that, Russia would say, oh, this is escalatory. But by then, it wasn't going to stop anything. And Ukraine would have been a little bit better prepared, a bit less of a shock had he done that. Okay, and then these stooges from Donetsk People's Republic, Lugansk People's Republic. They were there, they were meeting Putin and so on. Now, do some people in Donetsk and Lugansk really want to be part of Russia? I think some of them do, but I mean, it's only a minority. And another point, even if it were a majority, even if every single person in these two regions, so what? They're still part of Ukraine. Just because people in a certain area want something, that doesn't automatically mean they get it. Most people in Jammu or Kashmir would like to be independent, but legally they're part of India. That is true, you know. Putin criminalizes anyone who wants to campaign peacefully and democratically for independence or even real autonomy for any regions within Russia. We know that most Chechens would obviously like it, but then they got slaughtered for it. Okay. So, and the invasion went badly, but Putin held these blatantly rigged referendums, people voting at gunpoint. I mean, literally in some cases, in September 2022, when Lugansk and Donetsk voted to become part of the Russian Federation, and indeed Russia recognized that. They did the same with Zaporizhia, and indeed, God, what's the last one? Kherson. Even though they don't control the whole of those regions. Crimea is the only one they control in its entirety. The others, there's still a little bit that they've not managed to get, which is why he's so keen to get the rest of Donetsk. So yeah, that was it was clear what was happening. But obviously, some of Putin's cronies, like Alexander, is it Bordnikov? He's even crazier than Putin is. I believe in a physiognomy. You can tell a lot about his face. He's so uptight. He's aggressive. He's mean. He's vicious. He's Stalinist and so on. And these entities, they hark back to Stalinism when Ukrainian identity was very much suppressed and so on. And when Khrushchev was there, when Brezhnev was there, and they cited some Stalinist era legislation to bring back the death penalty for theft and so on. So it's a very, very dark future for these places, and they're sort of rust belts, and Russia has to subsidize them. They're really not worth it for Russia. And these cities like Mariupol and Melitopol, that Russia has largely demolished in the process of so-called liberating them. Russia's had to rebuild them, but only rebuild a little bit, like one street to look okay on the camera. The rest is just a dump. It's just rubble. So it's a bit of a millstone around Russia's neck economically. And obviously, natural hinterland is Ukraine, with which they can't trade. So it's also sad, it's also avoidable, and so many thousands of people killed, well, hundreds of thousands of people, something like 300,000 Russian soldiers. Ukraine's admitted to 55,000 soldiers killed. And for each Russian soldier killed, probably 3 wounded. For each Ukrainian soldier killed, probably 4 wounded, because, Russia doesn't bother to provide medical care to some of them, particularly if they're prison recruits and so on. And the war is going on. But, we might not even be halfway through. As they say, if a war doesn't end within 1 year, it usually lasts over 10. It's been going on for 4 years now. But there are analysts who say Russia can afford to fight for up to another 5 years. Then the economy is just so spent. Yeah. Then they've lost really, even Slovakia, even Hungary won't be buying Russian oil gas by that stage. Western countries will be so much into renewable energy. China will have milked Russia for as much as it can. Russia will have got so many guys killed or wounded, there just won't be enough people to come forward and manage the economy. The National Wealth Fund is going to be gone by the end of this year. The ruble may tank. There may be a banking crisis. The sanctions may be tightened. Western countries might buy actually nothing from Russia. They found alternative sources. Okay, so don't forget the date when Russia violated international law, the sovereignty of other countries. Remember the United Nations Charter. You don't try to change borders by force, which is what Russia was doing here.